All right. Welcome to High Tech Low Life, where today I have two new podcast hosts, Elroy Jenkins and Kay. Say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and well, let's get started on this newest edition of the High Tech Low Life podcast. And the first topic is the great Apple CPU migration. So, do you guys know anything about this?
I've heard some of the related topics to it over time. Seems to have been something a long time coming.
And what about you, Elroy?
I'll follow you guys' lead on this.
I see. So, essentially, what's going on is that Apple has finally announced, I think maybe a few months ago at this point now, that they're going to make the move from Intel-based CPUs to their own custom silicon, the kind that they use in their like iPads or iPhones for that matter. And there's a lot of implications that come with this, such as every program that's designed to be used on OS X right now, Macintosh basically, will not work in the future unless they update it or make it, program it for ARM instruction sets instead of x86 like we have now. So what are your thoughts on this?
It's interesting that Apple is moving away from compatibility because in recent years they've been emphasizing the ability through boot camp and other methods for people to do what is typically Windows work on their own operating system. It's interesting they would move so far as to move to a separate architecture.
But given what Apple stands for from a cultural point of view, it seems to be the culture that they want an Apple experience for Apple users. So I don't find it surprising that they're going to a format that's going to be strictly for Apple-based products, and it's less so we can give you the best of both worlds in terms of Apple and Windows compatibility.
All right. Well, my thoughts are that, well, I mean, you don't the kind of things that you see on like computers, like, aside from like games, like there's a lot of like really intense stuff that, simply put, doesn't really work on something like an iPad or an iPhone right now. Like, like CAD, video editing, Photoshop for that matter. None of that really works right now, though. I have no doubt that if they really wanted that Macintosh user base, they would make the switch. They would, I guess, update their software. But what about, everyone else that's already invested in like a Mac? Because Macs aren't cheap. They're like $1,000. They're like probably $1,000 minimum.
So you feel like this is a blunder on their part?
Yes, but Apple has proven me wrong in the past, such as when they removed their headphone jack.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I think this is going to be something that isn't going to sway a lot of the people who are really invested into being an Apple user. But I feel this will drive some of their potential customers away. Due to, as you said, things like Photoshop and CAD in particular.
And let's not even get started about gaming. Any thoughts on this, Elroy?
I concur, but being a dedicated Windows user, truthfully, it's only but so much that I have an interest in regards to this development for Apple.
Well, I mean, the thing with following Apple is that you don't even need to be an Apple user to really feel the effects on what Apple does to the entire tech industry. So, for instance, let's go back to the headphone example. Apple, when they released the iPhone 7, they got rid of a headphone jack. What else everyone else started doing?
Getting rid of headphone jacks.
Yeah, even Samsung, who actually kept them for probably the longest amount of time on their flagship devices anyway. started getting rid of them as recent as last year, actually. So Apple, yes, Apple in a way has a sort of grasp on everyone that is even remotely interested in technology, even if you don't directly buy into their ecosystem.
That's a fair assessment.
That is true.
So then, but then my question is, what sort of advantages are there besides the fact that Apple controls everything? Like, and this is a huge loss for Intel too, because since Ryzen 3 came out, Intel's been on a sliding scale of losing a lot. They've taken a lot of L's here. They have no major partnership with people the way AMD and Nvidia does, and now Apple, one of their biggest partnerships, is seemingly turning their back on them. Like I don't know how to describe it, but essentially, if Intel doesn't do something drastic or come up with a product that's significantly better than what they have made in the past, then I'm not so sure Intel has much of a place in the industry anymore. I don't think they're going to be going bankrupt or anything soon, but you know what I mean?
Yes, they had some issues, from my understanding, where their R&D was not really on the same schedule as AMD, and they've had to effectively play catch up, particularly since Ryzen 2, I believe. And I think Intel's basically stuck in the position they're in for at least the next few years.
Yes. Yeah, speaking of which, I would have thought that Apple would make the jump to AMD because, AMD has more cores. They are generally, the processors are very good, and they're cheaper, and they're more focused on productivity, which Apple really likes the productivity or the creatives angles, which is why they sell so well in high-end workstations. Any thoughts on this, Elroy? I know you've been kind of silent recent.
Well, you were mentioning about in terms of that whole thing about Apple catering towards creatives. Well, that's true because if you go to most schools that have established advertising programs, 9 times out of 10, that is what you're going to be working from. Essentially, they're going to have Apple stations set up.
That is true. That is true. I have seen that in my college. I don't know. Yeah, you guys were there too, weren't you?
Yes, we're very familiar with the Mac Labs and VCU and how it was.
Man.
You bringing back flashbacks of the crunch because of, well, unless you took a particular class there, the hours were very restricting.
Man.
But
Well,
if you took a class, because you had the access code, you basically could have permission for those late night sessions where you had to get projects done.
We can fix it in post.
Yeah, I suppose so. Let's see what else. I mean, do you guys have anything else to add to that? Okay, Elroy?
I think it's interesting. The most interesting thing to me is that ARM is not really... It's going to be excellent for their app store and so forth, because essentially they're just going to be able to port that over wholesale. But the higher end, they're effectively giving it up by going to ARM, because that's just going to have so much compatibility issues with things like higher-end Photoshop, video editing, and any sort of intensive task is just not going to work on ARM in the same way as it is on x86, at least in the current market and current developer environment.
And what about you, Elroy? Any thoughts?
Well, it would be interesting to see in terms of Apple's new trajectory, what they'll do, especially if they do encounter early bumps and roads, to make it a smoother transition. But like anything, it's a learning curve. So all we can do is kind of just wait and see what happens.
All right. And let's move on to the next topic. Electric cars, are they viable today?
Well, first, should we narrow this down to purely electric or hybrid or plug-in hybrid? What are we specifically looking at here?
Purely electric.
Well, one of the things that is a recurring issue is that for those states that are pushing a green economy kind of initiative, is that they're going to be essential, and you will see more of them, especially when you consider there's been an increase in Tesla charging stations for electric vehicles at various locations. And also bring up the question too of battery storage in terms of when you look at the kind of fuel sources that will guide these electric vehicles, it brings up another question, a number of questions in terms of also how are they going to be regulated? Is it a matter of is it going to be state-run utility, or are there going to be federal utilities that regulate electric vehicles?
Well, regular vehicles are regulated by state, are they not?
Well, see, the thing with electric vehicles, you have the question of when you're looking at the charging stations, because as far as to my knowledge, they're a standalone entity right now, but there's a question in terms of are they going to be regulated in terms of a state level, or are they going to be an independent entity? So you have a lot of legalities that have to be worked out in terms of electric vehicles.
Well, it's my understanding that Elon Musk is a very, I guess, open guy. He likes his tech to be. He likes sharing his tech around, because I remember reading a while ago, like a couple years ago, back when Tesla was starting up, that he offered to share like charging ports and like secrets and like other stuff in regards to Tesla's supercharging, and allow it to be compatible with other electric cars that other companies would make. I don't think any of those companies have really taken him up on that offer, but if that does end up being the case, I would imagine that government would regulate these charging stations, much like any other gas station.
I think electric car regulation will continue to be in the nature of most automotive regulation, which is a combination of federal and state, depending on the entity involved. For the most part, the stations would probably, I would imagine, fall under state regulation, similarly to gas stations. But the design of the vehicle themselves is more of a federal standard.
Yeah, I think that. Is everything all right, Elroy? There's a lot of background noise going on.
Excuse me. If it's better, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I can. Yeah. So, as I was saying, I think that electric vehicles, I feel like they're gonna probably want to, I guess, couple them together. Like, instead of having electric stations here, electric stations there, gas stations here, gas stations there, they're gonna try to regulate it in such a way that every gas station will have at least one or two electric charging ports.
Do you think through requirement or through some sort of subsidy or incentive? How do you think they're going to go about doing that?
Well, it would really depend on what administration is on right now. I think if it were the case now, I think it would be I would think it would be by regulation. I think if like some other people, I wouldn't know who is going to be, leading this, but I feel like I don't want to get too political, but I feel like I feel like it would be better to offer incentives to the gas station companies to get them to install these electric things, because think about it, electric charging up your car is a lot cheaper than pumping gas. Like, I've seen Tesla superchargers that like only charge like $5 for a full tank of electricity.
But the thing you have to understand in terms of as we see this, and let's take the state we all live in, Virginia. We're familiar with how Virginia operates. The fact that Virginia is going green it would make sense that it would be a subsidy because it gets people to buy into where the energy market is moving, in particular in the state of Virginia, as we look at more green-based initiatives. So they want to encourage people to ditch fossil fuels and go for an alternative fuel source.
It's to my understanding that they actually are going to end those subsidies in Virginia pretty soon. That's why my brother was rushing to buy his Tesla basically ASAP towards the end of last year. Because he wanted some tax breaks, I think. And I guess they're not offering them anymore or something, Virginia. Also do be careful. Also, yeah. Other than that, though, any thoughts, Kay?
I think it'll be interesting to see what happens here. But yeah, it pretty much falls down to whether it will not be able to be incentivized or kind of an unfunded mandate if they do go through with it. I don't expect to see any requirement for that in the next few years or so. I don't think there's enough public push for it at this point. Good or bad, I'm just not seeing it.
Any final closing thoughts, Elroy?
Well, given this push in regards to looking at green alternatives, it's definitely the right time in terms of pursuing this kind of technology. And much like Kay said, it'll be interesting in terms of what develops from this.
I see. And all right. Well, with that, we can move on to the next topic. It's one of the hottest topics right now, actually. And let's talk about some apps getting banned. So let's talk about TikTok first. You guys are familiar with it, right? I'm assuming you guys are.
More or less. I've never used it personally.
Yeah, same here.
Same here, but I remember first being exposed to it when I went overseas, and my cousin actually showed me the Asian version, which it was still called TikTok, but it was like a whole year before TikTok even came over to the US, I think. And wow, at first I saw it was really weird. Like, what the heck is going on? I thought maybe I don't know, but now it's over here. Now it's just annoying. I mean, I've got no qualms with it, but everybody's trying to advertise new social media. So I don't know if you guys noticed or not, but Mr. President has issued some sort of mandate for the Chinese to sell the Western portion of TikTok to some Western company. I know that Microsoft and Oracle were both interested in buying TikTok, and I don't know if anyone else was or not.
Well, while I'm not a TikTok user, the implications have already been felt because we know with Facebook's algorithm, it's the most adaptive social media network there is. Literally, if anything becomes popular, Facebook takes those elements and adds it to itself somehow. And what they've done through Instagram is to create a TikTok alternative called Reels, which has taken off. So clearly, companies were already thinking of how to take what TikTok did and made it popular and figure out how they could adapt it in terms of how they operate.
That is true. Any thoughts, Kay?
Well, this was kind of inevitable to a certain degree, particularly with the current administration. Between the increasing hostility to Chinese investment in U.S. technology, as well as the company who owns TikTok having close associations and cooperation with the CCP, I think this was the writing on the wall for some sort of response has been there for years. I think the current ongoing political hostilities between the associated parties definitely sped this up to why it's happening now, though.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when Huawei banned from the United States, along with all the stuff they sell.
It's just like that. Yes.
Yeah. And I
Same
think
thing.
the big reason why they targeted Huawei was because Huawei is trying to create infrastructure in the US, create 5G. Now that, and I think now they actually recently announced some kind of mandate against Huawei being able to use software and technology in the United States. Now they've just totally crippled Huawei, and people are suspecting that they might go under.
From my understanding, the security concerns have largely stemmed from central portions of infrastructure, and most countries have pretty much banned them outright from any sort of infrastructure creation. I think the UK allowed them in, but only in like remote areas, and effectively it wasn't considered a security concern, and it wasn't anything anybody would be interested in. But the issue is their connection with the CCP mostly.
And any thoughts on this, Elroy?
It just goes to show if people want to find some type of social media app to engage in hours of silly content that they can promote, they want to make a way whether when one thing gets banned, it gets birthed to another opportunity. Just another example of the ingenuity of technology.
Mm-hmm. And so this leads to the same topic, kind of, but this leads to a far more widely used app. Fortnite was banned from both the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. And Epic has responded with a 64-page legal document, the next day after they were banned, suing them for. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, before we get in this topic, I have one question to ask. Do you love Fortnite?
I don't. Do you?
No, I've never played it.
I'm indifferent to it. Like Kay, I haven't particularly played as well. Know people who do, but
I've tried the game. It's okay. It doesn't feel very right. It doesn't feel right in my hands. Anyways, so go. You were going to say something, right, Kevin? I mean, Kay. Shit.
It's all right. It's all right. You don't have to worry about that. That's not particularly identifying. But I was going to say that this kind of folds into the other topic, as it basically follows the idea of investment in United States companies, as well as the connections with the CCP as well, and what is referred to, I believe, as soft propaganda mostly. It's similarly to what the US has done in some ways, but the issue is, unlike the US where, you can companies often go against the grain politically. I mean, you can see Silicon Valley, for the most part, doesn't agree with the current administration, and that's widely known. You can't really find many major Chinese telecom companies that are doing anything but supporting the mainland Chinese administration.
Mm-hmm.
And they, in effect, have to bow to that pressure.
Of course. And though Fortnite wasn't banned for having Epic having 40% of ownership by Tencent, they were banned because they had implemented something that goes against Apple's TOS and Google's TOS, a direct payment option. Essentially, what Fortnite has done is they allow and there's an option in there that allows the user to directly pay Apple through the app rather than pay through the App Store, which some people might consider a liability. And I mean, I would tend to agree, but Epic already has their own payment system set up for their app, for their store, so I'm sure they have the work cut out for them. But anyways,
they have no friends left at this point, really.
Yes. So basically, Epic was, not only that too, but Epic also tried to I guess antitrust laws, because the rumor has it Epic's just trying to get their own game store on iOS and Google and Android so that they don't have to pay, you know?
That would make sense that there would be some type of motive like that for them to engage in something like this.
Yes, but there's actually a plot twist that happened very recently, and Apple has essentially revoked Epic's SDK, essentially making it so that Unreal Engine can no longer be developed for on the iOS. Essentially, every game that now exists that uses Unreal Engine on the iOS cannot be updated until, I guess, Apple reinstates their SDK or software development kit. So yeah, Epic's basically lost all of like mobile developers as well as people who play on iOS devices now. It's pretty crazy, man.
What kind of hit do you think that's going to take on their user base?
Well, from what I've read, Epic is trying to weaponize their young fan base to turn on Apple. And it looks like it's working, actually.
We'll see how this plays out in the long run, because this is just a short sample size. We have to give it some time before we really know the true impact of what will happen.
Oh yes, I would love to discuss what happened on the next episode of the podcast. If it wraps up by then, that is. So, Fortnite and TikTok are banned. Any other apps got banned? Any other apps?
Nothing immediately comes to mind. Interestingly enough, do you know what cut Apple takes from those transactions on the App Store?
30% on average, though.
Okay.
Bigger companies can negotiate. Like, I believe Netflix has negotiated as well, but apparently Fortnite hasn't.
So they could take a pretty significant user base loss and still come out ahead then.
Yes, they can. I'm sure they've calculated too. Actually, they did. They actually set up that feature. What? Not only did they allow you to pay Epic directly, but they give you a 20% discount on V-Bucks if you did. So essentially, you're paying 20% less if you go through Epic. So essentially, they propositioned it in such a way it made it sound like Apple was taking your 20%. Like, you know?
I noticed that 20% versus the 30% cut. It seems very intentional.
Yep. Now, move on to the next topic.
Certainly.
Next generation. PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Ugh.
Well, when you say PlayStation 5, you mean the glorified tuxedo, the piano,
The
I can think of a number of
router.
other memes.
The router.
The top hat.
I think the system looks ugly. And the controller as well.
It's interesting to kind of discuss this topic after the Apple CPU switch, because I feel like ever since consoles pretty much unanimously moved to, with the exception of Nintendo, moved to x86, they've slowly but surely become PCs with controllers over time as multiplayer has been phased out.
They have, and while I have no doubt that I'm probably gonna end up getting a PS5 at some point. The Xbox is a totally different story now, because all of Microsoft's like exclusive games that would have been exclusive are now going PC as well, and Game Pass. So like Gears of War 6 going on PC on release date as well. Halo Infinite, that too. Forza Horizon 6 or 7 or whatever, that as well. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And it's interesting you mentioned about release titles, because even though most of my consoles have been Sony based, I don't know if I'm the only one, so I just posed the question out there. How did you feel about the release titles for PlayStation 5? It was underwhelming for me.
Nothing really appealed to me besides Demon Souls, the remake.
Hopefully that will be better than the remaster of Dark Souls. I heard that was somewhat controversial.
Yeah, I heard too. It's being remade by Bluepoint Studio, who I'm told has a reputation for these sort of remakes. They did Shadow of Colossus. Well, they remade Shadow of Colossus, rather. They didn't make the game. Anyway, yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you have to kind of look at this as a comparison because right now Nintendo's not really marketing anything new. So it's kind of the thing of who has the better launch titles, the Xbox or the PlayStation right now.
Well, Halo would have been in the running, but they just recently delayed Halo. And
we'll see what happens with the launch of Xbox, but that potentially could be a blunder because this would have been a perfect opportunity if they knew one of their more popular franchises were guaranteed to be a launch title. This could be one of those occasions where you actually, in the grand scheme of things, saw the Xbox outsell PS5, but we'll see what happens because it's a long game. We're just talking short term right now.
well, Microsoft, from my understanding, is not really interested in anymore. They're interested in the whole Xbox ecosystem. They don't care where you buy your games or even if you buy their console. All they care about is that you're in there playing their games, I guess, so to speak. I don't know. I have Xbox Game Pass Ultimate for like 3 years. I'm sharing off my brother.
So you're thinking they're going the way of Sega then?
I mean, possibly. I don't want to say they're going the way of Sega because then that just leaves Sony as the only because Nintendo is already doing their own thing. Let's be honest. Nintendo and Sony.
They've always.
Yeah, they always have. But if you look at GameCube and PS2, they were definitely trying to compete on the same kind of games with almost the same kind of graphics and the same kind of horsepower. In fact, I think the GameCube was technically more powerful than the PS2. If I'm not
It was.
Yes. Yeah. So now that if Microsoft leaves the console market, then all that leaves is PlayStation, like Sony.
And
sorry, go ahead.
You have to kind of ask the question of Sony's interest, because historically a lot of Sony's interest in the console market has been pushing their format of physical media. I mean, the PlayStation 3 was intentionally underpriced to sell Blu-ray.
yeah. I remember that. Despite the $600 price tag, a lot of it was still cheaper than a lot of Blu-ray players.
I mean, a Blu-ray player at that time was $1,000, and the PS3 was a better one for $600.
Yeah, I could also play games. There wasn't, but yeah, Sony. I mean, what are they even pushing now? There's not like a new format. In fact, people are saying physical format's dying. I mean, I tend to agree.
And they gotta remember when you're looking at Microsoft, they just happen to be a technology conglomerate that happens to have a console. Unlike Nintendo, they don't live and die off of console sales, and neither does Sony because they are a technology conglomerate as well. So you got I'm saying this is just an extra incentive for them to make some more money, but it's nothing that either one of them has to do.
While I would agree with the assessment that you gave up for Sony now, I mean back then, but nowadays, I mean not a lot of Sony's other ventures have just not been doing so hot, like TVs. They don't even own the Vio brand anymore. They sold that, and I think they also sold the Ericsson brand as well. Sony isn't what they used to be. They used to be the Apple of Japan. I think I heard at one point, but I mean, they've put all their eggs in this video game basket. Aside from their film studio, which I mean, what was the last good movie they made? Besides Spider-Man?
I was about to say, you just excluded pretty much the only one they're known for now.
Yeah,
Well,
I
they
mean, like,
still have. I can't think of any particular TV series, but they still have TV series they produce as well. So that's not going anywhere anytime soon.
what TV shows though?
I couldn't give you a definite answer off the top of my head. I mean, I know they do, but nothing stands out right now.
I mean, see what I mean? They're not really doing nearly as hot as they used to be. They were like they've put most of their eggs in the video game basket. So to say that they don't live or die off of video games is kind of disingenuous because I mean I'm not gonna say Sony will bankrupt if the PlayStation 5 doesn't do well, but they're nowhere near Microsoft's level. And like even in like Nintendo, even if they have a failure, they still have that like I guess they call it decade money. They could last 10 years without making a single console or game.
Particularly with their recent financials.
Yeah.
And the thing you have to understand culturally, Nintendo has transcended being just a video game company to being a cultural phenomenon because you're talking about revenue. Just imagine the kind of revenue they're going to have once COVID dies down substantially and they open up their Nintendo World theme parks that they have lined up for Japan and in California.
Oh, dude, I'd love to go there when I go to Japan. If I go to Japan sometime, hopefully not during the Olympics. Though that sounds like there's not going to be room for even walking.
Those are expected to happen next year, right?
I
Yeah,
believe that's the plan, but we have to see how we navigate this COVID thing. So that's going to play a big part of it.
so let me ask the age old question: are you guys going to buy the consoles launch day?
I will say I've pretty much mostly throughout my lifetime been a Nintendo fan. And I probably will stick with that because I've either played on the PC or played on the Nintendo consoles. And at this point, as I mentioned in the beginning, as the Xbox and PlayStation slowly but surely become more and more kind of PCs in disguise, in my opinion, I don't see a reason to change that.
That's fair. That's fair. What about you, Elroy? Are you going to buy the new consoles when they come out?
Uh, More than likely, I am going to get the PlayStation 5. But like Kay, of course, growing up, Nintendo was always going to be my first love because the first console that I remember playing was the NES. It was my brother's, but still. So I will get the PS5, but also have my Switch Lite to enjoy as well. So if I become less enthused about the PS5, at least I still have the Switch Lite to fall back on.
Yeah, as for me, I'm probably not going to buy them at launch. The only one that I bought this generation, well, aside from I got an Xbox One for really cheap, like when the console started, so I got that obviously, but the PlayStation 4, the only time I really got that was around the time Bloodborne had come out. And I don't think that was a launch system. I don't think it was a launch console. A launch game, was it?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, because like aside from a few other games, like when Rocket League came in, I didn't really play a whole lot of games on my PS4. It was, for the most part, a Bloodborne box. And like sometimes I'll just buy consoles for a single game. I did that for my Wii U. Well, my Wii U came with Mario Kart 8, but the only game I really bought separate from that was Smash Bros. And Mario Party. Man, can't wait till they make a good Mario Party.
What's your favorite?
One of the older ones, I believe it's probably like 3.
I like
2 is my favorite.
I'm going with the original.
Ah,
Oh, that's controversial opinion there.
Yes, indeed. So, anyways, let's move on to the next topic. So, you guys know what Katawa Shoujo is, right?
I've played through every route but one.
Oh my god! You see, if you knew this K guy like I did, you would look at him and you would suspect he's a normal guy. But this man played all of the routes of Katawa Shoujo. What about you? What about you, Elroy?
I have to follow you guys' lead on this one.
So, Katawa Shoujo, the uninitiated, is a visual novel where you play as this one guy trying to romance a bunch of girls with various, what's the word? I don't want to say disabilities, but I mean that's kind of what it is, right?
That's the nicest word you can
Conditions is
use.
the word. How about conditions?
That's true. Yeah, we'll just say conditions. But essentially, you're trying to romance them, and at first glance, it really seems really weird fetish game, kind of, right?
I wonder why.
I absolutely go on. Sorry.
It's okay, but I am told that it's a really well written game, and it gets the nuances of this kind of stuff more.
It's not what you expect.
It's not what you expect. I hear the writing's actually, and it handles all these sensitive topics really well, more so than most stuff have very recently. But that's not the news. The news is that the artist Raid died, like maybe a couple weeks ago at this point now. Any thoughts?
Oh, is there any news on how that happened?
Let me look it up.
I mean, I have to qualify in my defense. My playing this game was while I was recovering from surgery and was on a significant amount of painkillers.
Oh shoot! What kind of surgery was it, Nate? If I'm
I had some chest surgery and pretty much got handed a month's supply of some heavy stuff and told, "Don't even think about not taking it."
well, I'm told that, from what I'm reading, it was a sudden death. Well, the tweet was Raid passed away suddenly this weekend, surrounded by family. He will be missed.
Wow.
And it was on his Twitter. I guess family got a hold of it. Anyways, there's no news on how he died, but I'm not really sure anyone's willing to release that.
And that's kind of a personal issue, anyways.
Yes.
Yeah. So, he's in our prayers, and his family's in our prayers too. And I guess it's okay to talk about the game now, right?
Certainly.
So, I've never played the game, but I've definitely heard of it, and I've definitely seen some people play it. What are your thoughts on the game?
I'm kind of in the hot seat here, am I?
Yes, this is your, dare I say it, expertise.
It's kind of interesting. The game. People expected a game coming out of the environment it came out of to be a bit more crude than it really ended up being. It was surprisingly well written, and I genuinely enjoyed playing it. Though, as I said, I have to qualify my statement in my defense with, as I said, I was not completely in the right mind for anything at that point.
Yeah, I remember the 4chan thread that gave birth to this game because the developer of the game, they're called 4-Leaf Studios. You know what 4chan's icon is? 4-leaf clover. I think that was pretty obvious.
Yes.
Well, okay. Let me ask this: since you mentioned you were sedated essentially while your original playthrough of the game, would you consider in a more sobering state giving it another go, or you kind of just leave it for what it was in terms of your experience?
What do you mean by that?
Well, what I meant is you were saying that as you were recovering, you were on extreme pain medicine. So that's why I was asking, would you be willing to give it a chance where you weren't recovering from any surgery? Would you be willing to revisit the game to see what you would think compared then to now?
I'd be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go on. No, you go ahead in this case.
Oh, I said that I would be willing to host that playthrough on YouTube channel.
I would, except for there's certain moments that YouTube would not approve of.
Can't you just like?
You can disable it.
Yes, that's what that. Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
No, I would say removing that, it actually is pretty surprisingly well written, and I would say the story of it is enjoyable, funny, and at times genuinely enjoyable. I would say it's a good game. If you like visual novels.
Yeah, I'm iffy on visual novels personally. I mean, I played Doki Doki Literature. I'm sure everyone has too.
No.
Well, I'm not going to spoil anything because it's a game on Steam.
Too late.
I mean, our good friend Elroy here hasn't been spoiled yet, right?
No, I have not.
Play it.
Okay.
Just do it. No spoilers. No spoilers needed. Just do it. I know, like I know visual novels aren't really your kind of games, but just do it.
But disclaimer, that was not a Nike endorsement.
Yes, anyways. Yeah, so rest in peace, Raid. And I mean, that's all I have to say about it. Let's talk about the next topic at hand. MMORPGs. Are live service games just MMOs in disguise?
What do you mean by that?
Like, massively multiplayer online. Does that mean that you have to have like 100 or so players in your lobby at once, like in your town at once, or like 100 or so players out in the fields, the wilderness, or whatever?
I would like to say typically yes, but it doesn't have to be. 'Cause, I mean, I think you would get a solid 50 players and still have that experience.
Well, like, yeah. So, like, is it still an MMO if every like section is like instanced? Like, let's take The Division or Destiny as an example. So people consider Destiny an MMO because, I mean, it kind of is, but when you're in like the exploration patrol area, you only see maybe like five people at once when you're loaded into a zone. And sometimes when you load zones in, you don't even see those same 5 people. You see different like instances of these zones. You know what I'm saying? Does that still qualify as an MMO?
I feel like the MMO kind of definition has gotten really kind of skewed in recent years. I'm not even sure what it means anymore.
Yeah, like let's take Call of Duty or Halo. And Call of Duty probably has like thousands and thousands of matches going on simultaneously, which probably means like millions of players are playing it right now. Does that mean it's an MMO?
But honestly, when I think of MMO, something along the lines of Maple Story was going to come to mind. I think of a fantasy environment. When I think of Call of Duty, it's online, but it typically doesn't have that MMO connotation, if you know what I mean. Like, for example, like what's the name of that game? DC Universe Online, where you're in the fantasy world, for example. DC Universe Online, Maple Story. I'm sure there's some other popular examples, Found Fantasy Online. So that fantasy element is just something that, at least with the way it's been presented to us, that I think helps to give definition as to what an MMO may look like.
Well, I mean, EVE Online has been going on for years, and that's not necessarily fantasy. It's sci-fi, and you can see different players like around the world, and I wouldn't say there's a lot of players because Eve Online is like a super niche game with extremely niche appeal. It's like what about something like that? Does that not count as an MMO?
I would say Eve certainly counts as an MMO, though, as you've said, it's very niche. I played it somewhat briefly, I would say.
Oh my god, you played Eve?
I did.
Is that XKCD comic accurate about Eve Online? The learning curve?
I would. Yes, there's several games I would put that way, but Eve is the sort of game where nothing is something you can take at face value. So yes, I would say the XKCD comic is very accurate.
Oh my god. Have you seen that XKCD comic, Elroy?
I have not.
Here, I'm gonna post it right now. Let me find it real quick. Here it is. Yeah, so aside from that though, I mean people used to before the term was for like League of Legends, dude. I think people used to consider League an MMO technically.
I mean, MOBAs existed quite a while before League.
I know. Wait, the term MOBA?
Dota.
I remember it used to be called Dota Likes, but like back before League and esports made it. I remember they were called. Some people called them MMOs. Some people called them Dota Likes. Kind of like how like every first-person shooter after Doom was called a Doom-like. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
Or like every game that came out that tried to like imitate Dark Souls is a Souls-like. Something like that, you know? It might be time to retire the whole MMO moniker of these sort of games, you know?
I feel like MMOs have gone a bit more out of style ever since MOBAs, and now the whole Battle Royale fad has taken place.
Battle Royale. Yes. Some of them can be quite good. I think I like Apex's gameplay. The gunplay feels so nice in that game. But I mean, obviously, I can't keep playing these sorts of games. I can't play like a billion rounds one game. I used to do that, and now it just makes me sick every time I think about it. Anyways, any final thoughts, Elroy? You with me, Elroy? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
I'll defer to you guys.
Well, any thoughts on the topic at hand? Any final thoughts? We'll move on. It seems to me there's some sort of technical issue going on with Elroy. What about you, Kay?
What about me?
Final thoughts on just this whole thing?
I feel like MMORPGs have largely fallen out of fashion. It's the similar way to how RTS fell out of fashion. It's simply just certain genres have gained popularity, and I feel like the current trend is battle royales.
Okay,
Definitely.
Can you guys hear me now? Sorry.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I was about to ask you what your final thoughts on RPG.
And agreeing with Kay, unless they're going to create an MMORPG experience that's more adaptive to include the elements, mobile elements which are popular now, I think they're pretty much on their last leg. So unless they're willing to be adaptive, it's no hope for them.
Yeah, my final thoughts are that, well, I think the term MMO is kind of sort of out of place now that a lot of games, even though the kind of games aren't necessarily like MMOs the way we see it, a lot of games have a lot of online players. It might be time to come up with a new moniker for these sort of games, the sort of MMOs that we're used to, like stuff. It's non-descriptive, kind of like how RPGs now are kind of nondescript because every game wants to be an RPG now. Anyways, let's move on to the next topic at hand. How familiar are you with KFC in their endeavors of making plant-based food?
I've vaguely heard of this.
I haven't kept up with it.
So, this is kind of the same angle, but like, so what KFC has done, they are 3D printing meat in the chemical structure, so to speak. Not impossible. They're not making impossible chicken. They're straight up making meat. 3D printing it, they say. What are your thoughts on that?
That is a big risk that they're taking, but we got to understand there was some air of controversy when they changed their name from Kentucky Fried Chicken to just the 3 letters KFC. So they found a way to navigate controversy because they still around, given how people had questioned as to what was the purpose of them changing their name like that.
I mean, that's a good question. I believe it has to do with the fact that they want to get rid of the Kentucky. No, I believe it has to do with the fact that apparently, in order to have the word Kentucky in your company name, you have to pay the state for trademarking. So they couldn't officially refer to themselves as Kentucky Fried Chicken anymore. They have to refer to themselves as KFC to avoid paying those trademark costs. But people still know that it's KFC. I mean, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Anyways, I believe if KFC and other places can successfully 3D print meat, it'll go over a lot easier than, trying to convert them to vegetarian-based meat or the Impossible meats. Like, I've never had an Impossible burger. Have you guys had it?
No.
And I feel like if they can 3D print meat, I mean, like, yeah, sure, there's some health benefits to not eating meat, but I'm sure they can engineer that. And apparently, there's an environmental benefit to not eating meat. What are your thoughts on this, Kay?
I would say that it's interesting they're trying to do that with chicken. Most of the appeal of the idea of kind of artificially creating meat was the idea, from my understanding, was the idea of creating higher cuts of beef at a much lower price. Chicken has generally always been exceptionally cheap as far as meat goes, so they're kind of in an awkward position for trying to push this.
I mean, that is true. So I think that if KFC can push this, I mean, like, KFC is owned by a massive conglomerate. What is it, Yum Brands or something like that?
Yes.
If KFC can successfully fund this technology, use this throughout their entire company, and not just chicken too, also for like beef and stuff. I don't know what else do they own? I know they own Taco, but what else do they own?
Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and KFC are all connected.
Pizza Hut too?
It's all the former Pepsi-owned brands.
Yes.
Huh.
Because if you notice at KFC, in terms of their found drink selection, they're all PepsiCo products.
Yeah, I don't go to KFC that often, so I didn't know that.
But that's also true with Pizza Hut and Taco Bell as well. All of their drinks are PepsiCo products.
That does make sense now that you mentioned that. Well, I think it's a worthy endeavor if they can do it. I don't know if it'll lower the cost. It definitely won't lower the cost of meat today, but I'm sure over time they can and will lower the cost. Not to mention less animals die.
But the only question, when you're looking at the risk of this printed meat, what would be the quality of it? That's my main question. What would be the quality of this?
Question. It's to my understanding that they're making it at a molecular level, so they can just make whatever they want. Really, they can make anywhere from like your cheapest cut of beef to like Kobe beef if they really wanted to. I think.
I was going to say Kobe is the area I've most heard about this technology in regards to, is because you could theoretically create Kobe at incredibly cheap price.
I'd like to try Kobe. I'd like to try this. Yeah, this laboratory made Kobe sounds interesting. And though I wonder if it would threaten like the traditional Japanese like industry of making these cows.
I think it would, but that's not a huge industry to my understanding.
I mean, of course not, because otherwise Kobe would be a lot cheaper. So it's not vegetarian. So my question is, what about like vegetarians and vegans? Because if you 3D print this meat, if it's meat in literally every way, but like without an animal dying or making this stuff, I mean, like, what are your thoughts on what they'll do?
I still see the vegetarian market sticking to what they believe in. If it's any kind of variation of meat, they're not going to necessarily indulge it or engage it.
All
From
right.
a policy standpoint, the idea of encouraging non how do I say this? Suffering free options. Encouraging that seems to be in their interest, so I feel like certain vegetarians will push it even if they're not personally for it.
Mm-hmm. That's
Well,
fair.
it's one less reason for Peter to pick it outside of KFC's.
Yeah. As for no, I think it really just depends on because as you know, this is definitely going to get regulated in some form. Whether or
Oh,
not government will be like, this isn't technically meat; it's a meat product.
yes.
Like you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, there's been some controversy over calling things milk or not that aren't milk. They're like almond milk, soy milk, and so forth. And on top of that, it's interesting we discussed KFC because with the all the quarantine going on, chicken wings have actually become quite the popular item.
Oh yeah. They're probably easy to deliver too. Anyways, any final thoughts on this before we move on?
Well, you don't have the legacy of a fast food brand like KFC by not taking risks. So it'll be interesting to see what develops in terms of this new endeavor.
How about you, Kay?
I think it's interesting that KFC is going about this because I expected it to come from like a steakhouse. But I think this is definitely something to investigate, and I look forward to the results of it.
Yeah, I think it's a worth multitude of reasons. I think that I mean, if KFC decides, it's not worth it, then I guess some other company will pick it up. But I definitely think it's a worth endeavor. They can make better meat, I guess, so to speak. But that's a different topic for today. Anyways, let's move on to the next topic. Advertising. It's become more prevalent and everywhere in every facet of your life. And it's literally unavoidable in a lot of cases. What are your thoughts on them?
Being a former advertising major, the thing you have to understand is in a society such as the US built on capitalism, at the end of the day, it's a matter of making sure people are spending money. We're a consumer based economy in the US. So, in terms of the question of advertising being everywhere, that's something we realized even at the youngest age because there was a study, I can't remember who conducted it, but essentially the study showed that at the age of 3, The logo you're going to recognize the most is the McDonald's arch, which does look like a curved McDonald's French fry. But
Yeah,
yet, at the age of 3, you're going to recognize that right away. Be like, I know exactly what it is. McDonald's.
it's crazy, man.
Not a Mickey D's fan there, Star?
No, it's not that. It's that exposing advertisements at such a young age. Like,
But the thing
kids,
is,
yeah,
it's not a question. Well, it's a question of strategy because it's not even that you go looking for it, but advertising is everywhere. You don't go looking for it; it's just there.
What about UK? What are your thoughts on?
I think it's kind of inevitable. I'm not really a huge fan of the extent to which advertising and particularly targeted advertising has taken a place in our lives. I think there was an interview not a few years ago with a former Target executive who talked about the degree to which targeted advertising has become disturbing to the average individual, and they've actually had to intentionally act like they know less than they do. It really falls into that whole idea of ads nowadays are so targeted that the average individual is frightened by how much companies know about them.
Yeah, like I remember the first time, like at targeted advertising I was exposed to it, or rather, gained knowledge of it, was definitely during college. I remember talking to one of you guys in college, and I think we were talking about something, and then all of a sudden it just popped up on my phone, and like, whoa, like like
And
that stuff is really freaky. And it happened to my sister. Well, a couple of years ago, she was absolutely freaked the heck out, man. It was insane.
and the thing you have to understand, especially as analytics has become very profitable, you have to be mindful when you're using search. Well, I won't say all, but a number of search engines. When you're on social media, that's what you're going to be bombarded with, just like that, in a matter of seconds. So you got to understand that that's not accidental, but that's a matter of the kind of analytics work that's being done.
Absolutely, yes. Um, well, well, first off, I can't stand advertisements. Period. Especially internet advertisements, especially the really obnoxious ones that like border on being viruses. I mean, I like the past few days to prepare for this. I tried browsing the internet with that an ad block, and it like really pissed me off to no end. Like sometimes I would click on links, but wow, no, there was actually an entire page-sized element that was invisible. But when I click on it, it leads me to the stupid ad website. It like drives you insane just how much crap there is. And like, let's look at your smart TVs. Like, you guys have smart TVs, right? Most TVs
Yes.
nowadays are
Yes.
smart. They're like way cheaper than TVs of old used to be because of all this advertising subsidizing. And I mean, yeah, but like at the cost of that, you like press the home menu to browse your stuff. Wow, there's an advertisement for like Netflix, Stranger Things, and like, does that not like? Well, I think at this point we might be approaching like the crazy like. Have you seen those patents? The advertising patents, like I think McDonald's patented or something.
Which ones are you referring to?
The ones where they're interactive and you have to say like I'm loving it or some crap in order
Oh,
to
the those ones.
yeah,
Well,
it's like how much longer till we reach that point?
well, can we be honest? In Minority Report, there was some type of mechanism with this device in place where the thing could scan you, and then next thing you know, you're bombarded with advertisement. We've gotten to the point where there is something similar like that because if you go to Times Square, I don't know if they still have that in place, but there used to be a Forever 21 ad that was on a timer, and essentially you were part of the advertisement. Every so many seconds, it took a picture of you if you were standing near that particular advertisement on in Times Square. And that was for Forever 21. So you didn't even volunteer to, but involuntarily the ad just included you.
That's messed up, man.
Advertising
But
is.
the thing is, oh, excuse me, Kay. I'm sorry. Were you saying
I was
something?
going to say, advertising is just becoming this monolith at this point where there seems to be a few companies controlling it at the end, and I'm a little terrified to which the degree they know about me.
And the thing you have to understand too, in terms of advertising being so technology based, I can't remember what kind of ad it was, but I know it was in Times Square. If you had a certain app on your smartphone, you could potentially kind of shape the direction that the ad was going in. So
Ugh.
by you being able to do that, they know exactly what phone brand you have for. Next thing you know, you're getting ads for things relevant to that phone. Because mobile advertising is the worst, as we know, because of all the stuff that come with. You may just get a free app thinking that it's going to be free, but no, there's a price attached. You're going to be subject to whoever paid for ads to run during this particular app.
Man, yeah, I agree. And what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, yeah. So wasn't in Minority Report? Wasn't that same like advertising system like it made it so that everyone else saw like their own face in that screen?
Kind of, I believe there was something similar to that, but the fact is that's going to be a reality soon, unfortunately, where you're seeing like these holograms of whatever, where they think they're trying to appeal to whatever your assumed demographic is.
Yeah, man. This section of the podcast is gonna milk if I ever get monetized and start putting ads on my YouTube on my videos. I might just have to not monetize my podcasts. But
But the thing we have to understand in terms of just how much advertising is apparent. Consider NASCAR and what they did that was very interesting in terms of all those cars are corporate sponsored. And that's how you make it in NASCAR, basically. Not only are you going to get picked up by a team, but you hope they have a popular corporate sponsor. So we can see that Tide logo, that M&M logo, or whichever company is air apparent on the car in terms of the uniform that the NASCAR person raced, because by default, they're an extension of that particular company.
what's stopping these executives of all these like sports ball games to just add advertising logos? What's stopping them from like taking a Lakers jersey and just sticker bombing the crap out of that with advertisements?
It's funny you mention that because that is a reality in terms of I can't remember if it was this year, but recently they started doing that on NBA logos. You will see certain corporate um sponsors. Even on football you see that. And I'm talking about the real football, not American football. In the real football you'll see certain corporate sponsors may appear on the jersey. So that has happened.
Yeah, just something up with advertising. Speaking of which, I've actually been trying to set up my Raspberry Pi that I bought for as a Pi-hole DNS server, of which I'm not going to do just yet because I'm still actually router shopping. I'm trying to find a mesh router system, and I can't be bothered to. Well, I could, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I should rather tear a hole in my house in order to wire all these wires up. You know.
Sounds like you've got quite the dilemma ahead of you.
Yeah, quite the dilemma. The wiring, either deciding whether or not I should wire a bunch of access points or just getting a mesh system. I might just get a mesh system because it's easier, and I have a way, and do have a way to route my computer to my router. But that's besides the point. I am waiting for that router to come in so I can set up my Pi-hole as a DNS server. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
What about you, Elroy? Are you familiar with it?
No.
So, do you know what a Raspberry Pi is?
Yes.
So, they made a software that can run, well, just about any Linux-based computer, but especially the Raspberry Pi since it's so energy efficient. essentially it's a program called Pi-hole, which essentially you install on your Linux-based system. You can set up your DNS and other stuff, and essentially what you do is you tell your router to go to this DNS first. So basically, your router, before it goes to the internet, it goes to your Raspberry Pi, and the software filters out basically a bunch of ad-based domains that it knows, and its filters that it can update. And so basically your entire Wi-Fi system is in fact ad blocked for the most part. Even your smart TVs and stuff, and like your phones and stuff, where you will be able to get like ad blocking software.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I think if you don't have a Raspberry Pi, get one for like $30 and set that up if you can. I'd love to help you guys set yours up if you decide to do that.
Well, that's certainly also could be something that'd be interesting to discuss in another episode. If we did pursue that endeavor.
Yes, and I think I'm gonna have to make a video on that at some point.
Yes, that would be good.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I have the system set up. I just need to link my DNS, but the current router that I'm using doesn't allow for that because it's an ISP router that I should have a while ago. I didn't.
But as we consider, as we continue our discussion on advertising, we have to be mindful that this is one of the worst periods for advertising as we're in a presidential election. And there's no limit to the shenanigans, no matter what your political beliefs are in terms of what the candidates may put their name behind. And as a disclaimer, we on this podcast respect all political views and opinions. And something to consider is that nothing will be off limits, whether it's the melody to your favorite song, some type of celebrity endorsement, some type of annoying jingle you're gonna hear over and over again, outlandish accusations. All bets are off. And keep in mind, once McCain-Feingold was repealed, there is unlimited funding that can go into any election.
All I'm gonna say is just educate yourself. Don't blindly believe advertisements of any sort. You know what I'm saying? Even
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that also leads into our next topic: reviewers and the conflict of interest, especially like on YouTubers. Like, have you seen videos from the likes of like Linus Tech Tips, MKBHD? Like, what about game and like other game reviews and
Yes.
stuff too? So the big ones like MKBHD and Linus have the audience and the ability to basically, I don't want to say whatever they want because they really can't, but like they have the ability to just not get bullied by these guys into essentially being forced to say positive things or else lose access to a product that might help you make some revenue. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So there's been this recent controversy with MSI and Tech GB or something like that. I don't remember the name, but essentially MSI bullied them, or more or less tried to like talk them down out of saying negative things in their video, their title, because their title was MSI review disappointing, and they expressed their dissatisfaction with certain elements, namely the like physical build and stuff. But then I guess MSI got in contact. MSI EU got in contact rather. And I mean, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on the modern integrity of reviewers of anything, really?
It's becoming increasingly difficult, I feel, for reviewers to have access to the material they need in order to review while also maintaining their independence.
Of course. What about you, Elroy?
Similar to what Kay just conveyed, given that it's a commercial society they're trying to operate in, it's very difficult in terms of trying to maintain some sense of autonomy while realizing that at the end of the day, somehow, some way, you're going to have advertising involved. Now, you might be more mindful what advertising you agree to deal with, but I feel some way it's going to be involved somehow because just when you look at the framework in terms of how our economy is based.
Well, I think a lot of viewers have to be careful to mention that their reviews were either, well, not necessarily paid for, but like companies have to that they have to mention that companies sell this product. Like when I have happened to me, I'm not going to say a lot in detail for the audience, but I will say that a lot of companies that I've worked with have been pretty good to me. They let me say things, not necessarily say things, but like they let me speak my mind. They let me just say what I feel and give my thoughts in a constructive criticism sort of way. I guess it's because I didn't really speak super harshly about certain devices, but I mean that's just kind of how it is. Now, like if I found a horrible piece of crap garbage thing that I have yet to review, but it will be coming across one eventually, then I don't know what's gonna happen. And also, like I think some reviewers have to be careful to not review certain products because they could say, "Oh, it's a bad product," but it could just also be seen as an endorsement, regardless. Thoughts?
I feel like you're pretty much straight on the money here. A lot of the issue is access to those items they need for being the reviewers, or to be more specific, a lot of the shall I say, first to review. You know what I mean? The a lot of the reviewers who have first access to a product in order to get that first review on video tend to be the ones who have been granted access by the producer themselves.
Yeah, that's fair. They do have.
And
Mhm.
let's be clear. I'm sure all of us will agree with the statement I'm about to make. Even though we're critical of advertising as we see it, if you're going to say that you're for anti-advertising, that means you're anti-media. Because the thing you have to understand, historically speaking, advertising is the reason we have some of the things that we do today. Not thinking about, like for example, I think it's safe to say that the original memes were political cartoons.
Hmm.
When you look at the basic structure of what a political cartoon was, it took some aspect of a popular aspect of society and it was to satirize it. And a lot of times with memes, that's essentially what we're doing today. Stuff what doesn't necessarily have to be politically driven, but still, in principle, it's the basic concept is the same.
Yeah, I should clarify. I'm not exactly anti-advertisement. I don't think anybody here is. I'm just saying that there should be some regulations on certain kinds of advertisements. As long as it's not intrusive, it's okay. But come on,
And
look at the state of the internet. Look at the state of internet advertising. It's out of control.
and start logical. You mentioned about regulations. That is why Joe Camel is no longer with us because I'm sure most of us grew up with Joe Camel, very well known cigarette mascot, but because they felt that that was too appealing to children, they basically that's why you haven't seen him in years. He's been done away with.
I mean, they aren't wrong. It was really appealing to. Would you say it wasn't appealing to children? Would you want Mr. Joe Camel to come back?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, there should be. I mean, there should be regulation. the sort of advertisements they can do. Some of them are kind of crazy, and some of them are just outright untrue. And I'm not talking about political advertising. I'm talking about like real life advertising for products. I don't know. And also also another thing with advertisers and whatnot is that because they pay these networks and stuff to essentially run basically run advertising products, they indirectly get some say into the sort of like you know what I'm saying? They get some say in these like channels and stuff.
And the thing we have to look at, the way most mainstream TV stations are set up, that's where a good portion of their revenue is coming from. In terms of they want to get prime advertisers during their most popular programs.
Yeah, I don't watch TV anymore.
I mean, who here owns a cable subscription?
My parents do, though. I've been trying to get them to
Okay.
cancel and go back to using antennas, because apparently it's really freaking good now. Like 4K.
Okay,
Really?
I might be the only one because the package includes everything. So internet, cable, it was the best option in terms of being fiscally feasible.
I still wait, even cheaper than just internet by itself.
Well, I mean, I haven't had any issues, especially as I telecommute. So I would say it's not a bad option in terms of what I have now.
Wait, do you pay for home phone as well? If you don't
Yes.
mind me asking. Huh. Yeah, my parents haven't paid for haven't paid for home phone in years.
Because the landline is reliable, especially when we had an instance where, because where I live there was a rash of severe storms, the phone service was gone and there was only the landline
I could see
outside of cell phone use. So we didn't necessarily lose power, but it was a matter of there was no access to the phone service.
I could see the use for landlines, especially if you're doing business. But as for cable television, I don't necessarily. That's really what I say. I think you're just better off with like one of the major subscriptions, like Netflix, Blue,
Yeah,
probably.
well,
Blue.
I understand, but
like,
and I can understand certainly if you want to go that route, but I think that definitely leads to discussion on another episode in terms of the changing face of cable television as we switch to a more subscription-driven society.
Yes, indeed. I think we will save that for later. Though, I think any final thoughts on advertisers and reviewers and how much power these advertisers hold?
I feel like a certain amount of regulation is inevitable at this point, but I'm not sure what form it's going to take.
I can tell you they're not going to try to regulate political ads. I'm almost 100% certain of that.
My closing thoughts would be you have to understand the impact of lobbying in terms of elections and what decisions are made. So these advertisers have a lot of money to spend, so they have the ears of lobbyists. So that's something that we have to pay close attention to as well. And maybe that's something we discussed too in terms of just how the advertisers can have an impact on elections. I think that'd be a good discussion topic.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. So, moving on to the next topic at hand, let's talk about going paperless. Have you gone paperless yet on anything?
As we're navigating COVID on my job, there have been measures that have been instituted to reduce as much paper use as possible. So one thing, for example, they've transitioned to as far as when you're doing leave or overtime, that is emailed now. There are not paper trails, all digitized now. And even when one thing we had to do at work was fill out paperwork that basically was making sure that we did things that were COVID efficient. We basically had to watch a video to make sure that we were COVID efficient in terms of our knowledge and what we were doing. And when you had to fill out the paperwork, you did a digital signature. You did not print out paperwork and turn it in.
I think it's a good thing to go paperless because yeah, especially now with like emails and like PDFs and all that good stuff. I mean, like, what's the point now? Unless you just live in like unless you're living in like an area that isn't really known for the internet or technology and stuff like that, like in the middle of like the Midwest or something.
And I'm glad you mentioned that point, Star Logical, because in certain rural-based economies, you're talking about the potential reduction of jobs, and because they may not have the most up-to-date technology to engage in those kind of paperless business practices. So their whole way of life would be changed overnight in terms of if they were forced to do that.
Mm-hmm. What about UK? Any thoughts? Have you gone paperless yet?
I haven't. Paperless generally has certain advantages in terms of the access to that information, be it by my phone, email, however. It's excellent to have that access, but the issue is I enjoy having that paper statement to back up to should there be any controversy.
That is fair. That is fair. And I think a lot of reputable companies like banks not do have the sort of like same standards of backup as they would if it were on paper. You know what I'm saying?
But the thing we have to understand, popular media has been alluding to this for a while. Because even if you think of a movie like Idiocracy, that's not far-fetched in terms of people can pay for somebody scanning a capture. I mean, that's what was going on in Idiocracy. Except for they say barcode, but we know barcode capture basically same thing in principle. And then also, as we know, there's been an increase in terms of the number of ATM machines available. That's something growing up I didn't necessarily see as much, but now, that's a regular thing to see that because that's a way to do things without having to worry about the germs that spread in terms of paper currency. And even a lot of times when I go to Comic Cons, a lot of transactions I do are through iPay or the Amazon equivalent of iPay.
I mean, yeah, like what like do you think this could also preclude I'm not suggesting that it would, but I'm asking, do you think this sort of paperless movement could eventually move on to money? Let's say instead of carrying a couple of let's say instead of like some of your funds in your bank account, credit in your credit card, and some like a couple of dollars in your wallet, like, let's just say everything is just all digital. They somehow phase all the money and coins.
Well, with cryptocurrency, essentially, that's what you're alluding to.
Yeah, I know that cryptocurrency is that way, but what about the American dollar? Let's go with that for now. The US dollar.
I think we're moving to digitized currency the way things are headed. It won't even be called, I don't know what the name of it would be. I don't know if it'll be called the cyber dollar, but it'll be some type of digitized name. But we're slowly
Space
but surely heading there.
Yeah. So from what I've read, from what I've heard, the only reason we still have the penny, and people, I think about 70% of Americans are in favor of just getting rid of the penny. The only reason we still have pennies apparently because lobbyists, essentially the nickel or zinc or whatever niche material it is, they have lobbyists that keep the penny, that do their best to keep the penny like there. And that's part. And I mean, like, what about paper industry? They could they just prevent paperless from becoming a reality, like totally paperless?
I think we're a long way off from that.
That is fair. That's fair. So I think we should move on to the next topic. Final thoughts, anyone?
It'll be something that, like I said, we just have to continue to observe in terms of the trends and movements regarding just how paperless we will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the next topic we're at hand is E3, or the lack of this year. And there's a couple of replacements that happened, obviously. What are your thoughts on any of the announcements, the event itself being canceled, any
I
games?
welcome Nintendo's approach where they said that E3 will be more so for we'll do make it a showcase. They're not necessarily doing demonstration, but it will be a showcase. And they use Nintendo Direct to get out their big announcements. Because I feel while E3 in its heyday was good for bringing awareness as to what the big video game companies and developers were working on, it did a disservice by being so exclusive and not enabling the average fan that really invest in those products from being able to take part. It wasn't even until within the last 5 years that they were even able on the very last day fans to be able to go and take part in the event. At first it was just insiders and reporters.
I mean, that's kind of what a trade show is. Like CES is much the same too, and they still don't allow general public to go in.
I still think that's a disservice in terms of just how more you could get out of your event if you made it friendly to the fans. Because it only would help E3, it wouldn't be a hindrance towards it.
I mean, there's probably a reason. There's probably a reason for it. I mean, they made it, I guess, for insiders, so made it so that only insiders could get all the news and stuff. The average person.
Let me preface my views as someone who's a regular attendee of Magfest. They have a lot of indie developers that allow the fans to test games and offer their comments on them and get updates in regards to when some of these indie titles will launch. And that's not taking anything away from the Magfest experience. So that's why I say it's a way to bring both together and it could work. That's just my take.
I would love to go at some point. I haven't. I don't even know the time periods, and I just never had the time. And I definitely never had time as a student. Now, as a student, I'm not so sure that's a problem anymore.
And it's funny, I ran into that same issue during my collegiate days, but I made a promise to myself. Once that was over and done with, I would attempt to go to at least one. And well, now it's become a staple for me. But that's something we may want to consider in January as it comes up. That would be nice to do a live podcast from Magfest. Something to think about.
Something to think about. How much are tickets to Magfest, by the way?
Given COVID happened, I'm not sure how that's going to impact in terms of the way that they do things. But it just all depends on what you want to get out of it. I believe about 60 or 70 bucks for the 4 days is the basic price. However, if you want to get some of the MagFest exclusives, the price to go up, and it's a tier system. But it's not bad for what you're getting when you look at the overall experience.
It's based in DC, right? Maryland?
Northern Virginia. Well, kind of the DC Maryland area.
The DMV area?
I can't not think of the name of the area exactly where the Gaylord is. That area, the Gaylord Hotel.
Yeah, the area, that little area is called the DMV area.
But it's a particular name for that area. But generally speaking, that's where it is geographically.
Yeah. Back to the topic of E3 though. I mean, E3's been dying for a while. But most people don't even care about E3 all that much anymore because, well, you can get your announcements online. Let's say the day of like Microsoft's showcase, you can get all these trailers for all these games they just showcased. They showcased Sekiro and Devil May Cry 5, two games I was super duper interested in the last time they had E3. And you know what? They uploaded a better quality version of those trailers online because, well, the stream was a piece of crap. And not to mention, Sony left E3 as well. It's been 2 years in a row since they've been at E3. they announced that last year, 2019, they wouldn't come to E3. They also announced that 2020 they also wouldn't come to E3. That was before COVID happened, though. But you know what I'm saying?
COVID has led to a certain amount of instability in the industry.
Well, I mean, but this was before COVID was. But they announced it before COVID was even really big in China. It was in January, I believe they announced it, that they wouldn't be at E3.
But like as we said though, in terms of E3, maybe this is the perfect time for E3 to reinvent itself and do something different because the way it's going, eventually the people aren't going to support it anyway because as far as what the reporters need, they can get it digitally or by other means.
Yeah, I think the 2020 pitch said that they were going to quote unquote reinvent E3 for 2020. A fan, media, and influencer festival. I don't know what could that possibly mean, really.
Well, like I said, the closest thing I know of to that is Magfest in terms of the setup. But then again, while Magfest does respect mainstream gaming, the people who do vendor there tend to, like I said, there are indie developers trying to get their name out there. So that's the difference in terms of who may go there. But there are different mechanisms which the mainstream game companies will use to get some of their big products out there. Perfect example I can remember is when Tekken 7 was getting ready to come out, several months before Tekken 7 was released at Anime Expo, they had a tournament for Tekken 7. And they also had the first demo for Kingdom Hearts 2 as well that fans could actually play.
Kingdom Hearts 2, you said?
I mean, 3, excuse me. The most recent Kingdom Hearts. I'm sorry.
Ah.
The most recent Kingdom Hearts. Thank you.
I mean, for Tekken 7, Tekken was out in the arcades for several years before it even came to current gen consoles.
But this was the console version. Like I said, Anime Expo, if you went, you could have been one of the first people to play it before, your friends did. So that's the point I was making.
That's fair.
Because what they were doing at Anime Expo, they actually had a tournament where if you win it, you would gain entry into one of the bigger gaming tournaments. So it was a win-win in terms of the advertising, then also getting somebody the opportunity, like I said, to make a name for themselves on the competitive circuit.
Does Magfest have fighting game tournaments there?
They do. They have all kinds of gaming tournaments, but yes, they do as well. Yes.
I might have to look into that. Yeah, it's been a while since I've played fighting games, but I think I still got it. Do I? I don't know. Man, I know.
That also would be something too. Yet again, you're talking about E3 reinventing itself. That's another thing to look at, possibly some type of competitive tournaments of some sort, because that always builds an audience and gets attention. So just an idea. So maybe the question I can propose to everybody is, if you could have your utopian or ideal E3, what would it include?
Yeah, submit it in the comments down below. Maybe we'll address it in a later episode of the podcast if we get enough. I'm not saying next episode. I'm in a later episode podcast. That said, I haven't. What about UK?
Well, could you narrow that down a little bit?
Like, what do you mean? I don't understand.
The question.
So, what are your thoughts on reinventing Evo? Like, what would be your idea of a good
Evo? Are we talking about
not Evo, sorry.
Or E3?
No, not Evo. E3. Man, I've been getting... They're so close to each other, too. Confused.
I mean, I understand the confusion. They're very closely related in terms of the overall themes, or what they should be, shall I say. I feel like E3 needs to be something the average person can kind of feel they saw the results of when they make it. a journalist-only experience, they, in effect, have excluded a certain amount of their participants who are huge fans, by all means.
Like all the stuff I was saying earlier about being the nature of what a trade show is. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to go to E3 one day before it becomes irrelevant. But I feel like that might be too late unless they can really reinvent the wheel.
But the thing about E3, clearly Magfest is not in as big a facility as E3. But the thing about Magfest and this is why, and yes, I'm speaking with a certain level of bias, but what makes it stand out in terms of it has an appeal to people all over the world, because the first year I went, there was a guy from England there. Last year I met a guy that came from all the way from Israel because a friend of his told him about this. And this is true, all the way from Israel to come to Magfest.
From Israel? Why Magfest in particular?
Because that's the point. That's what I'm trying to get to. It has the experience that we wish E3 did in terms of paying respect to the fans, in terms of their panel, their music concerts for video game based music. There's plenty of video game experiences, and then there's also the kind of connections you make when you meet people. So it has this very good, warm experience that E3 doesn't tap into. So that's why, because of how great Magfest is, it will attract people all over the world to come to this event. Like, we're talking about 30,000 plus people who are diehard gaming fans.
I mean, I would also love to go. Yeah. What about the other various cons? I think Europe has Gamescom, and Japan had Asia in general, but mostly Japan.
Yeah, then you have PAX Penny Arcade Expo.
Like
South by Southwest has some type of gaming component.
Yeah,
You have a classic.
Yeah, sorry.
And then you have a classic gaming festival. I can't remember the name of it. You also have the video game. I mean, not the video game. The convention in Indianapolis. I cannot think of the name of it. That's all certain level of video game experience. Maybe Kay can help me out there.
There's also the Tokyo Game Show. That's primarily
Yes.
where you get all the Japanese games, the sort of games that we would be more interested. I would be more interested in, kind of.
And Kay, what is that convention in Indianapolis?
Which one?
The gaming convention.
You'll have to be more specific than that.
I know it's mostly board game, but there's still a video game component. As well.
Board games in Indianapolis, I want to say that would probably be Gen Con.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to reference. Gen Con.
Gen Con.
It's mostly board games, but there's still a video game component as well. But all of those, like I said, the examples I gave are things that E3 does not have in terms of the fans feel appreciated for coming.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, again, there's all these cons I do want to go to for the experience. Just once, and maybe never again if they suck. But I mean, like, I've been to. There was one in my old hometown. I'm not going to say what hometown. If you know it, you know it. But there's one that I went to in middle school called Fusion GC, or Fusion Gaming Convention. It happened a long time ago, year 2006, and they never made one since. But it was awesome, and I just wish the guys would heck, I'll help them if they're listening to this right now. If they're listening to this right now, I would be willing to offer my help in getting you guys set up again. Sorry about that. I don't have the Rona, by the way.
Good to hear.
But, yeah, so it's a small gaming convention due to the nature of. I would love to. I'd love to help them get that set up again, because wow, I'd made some good friends from there. It was really cool too. I actually got into a sort of like game show competition when I was still in middle school. I almost won, but they asked me an Earthbound related question, and I didn't, and I had never played the game at that point.
Oh.
It had something to do with like a photographer or something. What did he say?
Always the obscure question, right?
Yeah, what did he say? What before he took a picture? I don't know, but they gave me the nickname Ranger.
What's your nickname again?
They called me the Red Ranger. I didn't have like a.
Oh, I know the context, but
Yeah.
I know the context.
Yeah. Anyways,
MMPR.
but yeah, I would. Yeah, if they could, if hey, we should set up our own convention, like in somewhere in our state. You know what I'm saying?
That is something to be discussed and planned. Yes, that would be interesting.
Interesting. Easier said than done, but interesting.
High Tech Low Life Con, or HTLLCON. Is there a good acronym for con besides CON?
Maybe it needs to be
High Tech
HTLLC.
or
High Tech Low Life Con. There you go. HTLLC.
Or HTLLX for Expo.
I like that even better.
I think we should definitely set it up. I mean, not literally, but like maybe.
Well,
maybe if I get 10,000 subs.
To our listening audience, that's a work in progress. So just know we're gonna try and make that happen.
Eventually, not now though. We'll let you know if it becomes reality.
And speaking of things that we want to talk about in the future, I don't know if all of our listening audience has heard, but G4 is making a return.
G4? That like
they're working on what that would look like in terms of G4, the gaming channel that was near and dear to so many of us, making a return. So that's something that we want to talk about in the future. But just wanted to give people the FYI so they can start doing their research on what that may look like. But yes, they're making an effort to bring G4 back.
They're bringing back Attack of the Show and stuff like that. Like X-Play.
Keep in mind, like I said, we want to save this for a future episode because they're still working on what that framework will look like. But this is just something to whet people's appetites, to let them know G4 maybe. Seriously, they're trying to work on it. So I'm not sure.
They know what they're doing.
All right, that sounds fair. Final thoughts on this topic before. Okay.
Yes.
Final thoughts on this before we move on to the final topic.
I think in conventions in general, particularly with the current environment, are having to go through kind of a certain level of evolution that some will definitely succeed out of, but I mean, nobody knows what the future of conventions are right now. And I hope personally that some of the major conventions come out of this unscathed, but I'm not sure how this is going to end up.
What about you, Elroy?
This is the perfect example for conventions to examine what they do well and make the necessary adaptations from the standpoint of safety, while also making sure they can create an environment that the fans that support them will enjoy and want to support for years to come.
And my closing thoughts are that I think expos and like conventions and stuff should be careful as to not become this influencer sort of like deal going on. Like, how do I explain it? Oh yeah, like how only like major influencers can go to these expos. Like, imagine like you know how E3 is just like presence. Imagine Anime Expo, but only big anime YouTubers can attend. That's like the kind of level of like exclusivity that I don't want at all in any sort of expos period. So moving on, let's talk about one particular expo, DC, the DC fandom expo. So let's talk about all the stuff they announced, because they announced it today, and there's a lot. There's quite a few things on this list of stuff they announced. You guys want to talk about anything in particular?
Sure. Just to give some background, Star Logical reference DC's Expo. Essentially, DC Comics is using this as its opportunity to really promote their big projects that they have coming out. One thing that I'm particularly interested in is this reboot of their movie Suicide Squad. I know it's oftentimes a controversial topic in terms of some people loved it, some people hated it. I mean, I enjoyed it personally because I felt it accomplished the goal of introducing the story of the characters involved. But it's going to be interesting in terms of they definitely went for a more mainstream approach when you look at some of the actors that they're going to have included in the reboot for Suicide Squad. So we'll see what happens in terms of when it's released, how people will receive it.
All right. So, what about UK? Any thoughts before we get into these?
Somewhat optimistic about the future of DC's films based on their recent events.
Yeah, I am too. I'm like Aquaman, the last movie they made, I believe. Oh wait, no, they made a Harley. I haven't seen that yet.
Aquaman was great.
Aquaman was great.
Okay, don't spoil it for me. Aquaman's on my list to see, but I did enjoy Shazam though.
Gotta keep up here.
Yeah, you gotta keep up, man.
Oh, no problem. Oh, trust me, I'm well aware of it, but I will be caught up soon enough. But like I said, I did enjoy Shazam. I'm sure you guys saw it as well.
Yeah, Shazam is pretty good. It's not. I don't think it was as good as Aquaman though. Yeah, they released that around the same time Captain Marvel came out. What are your thoughts on that?
I wasn't a big Captain Marvel fan personally.
Same.
Captain Marvel, I felt, was one of the weaker Marvel films. Absolutely.
I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they were still just trying to set up Endgame. Like same with the Ant-Man movie.
Yeah.
Ant-Man was fun on its own, though. Captain Marvel was just... It wasn't a very good film on its own, whereas Ant-Man was at least funny. I feel like Marvel has decided Ant-Man is to be the low-budget kind of comedy film, and that's fine. That's a good niche.
That's fair. That's fair.
But the thing we have to understand, I like DC's approach more so than Marvel, because even though DC has partnered with HBO Go, a lot of their stuff that they have on their DC Universe streaming service will also be on HBO Go. They're not forcing us to necessarily get another subscription because we gotta remember Marvel has made it clear going forward with the next phase of their movies, you're going to need to watch the streaming shows to know exactly what's going on in terms of the direction they're headed in.
Oh
So
my!
I give DC credit for not taking that same approach because that would be disappointing if I can't keep up with movies because I have to have watch some meaningless streaming show that I really wasn't even interested in.
That is that. I don't. I mean, that's fair. I mean, it's fair. But it really like just. I feel like aside from like movie sequels and like stuff like that, I feel like movies and like separate media entities really should be like self-contained within itself. You know what I'm saying?
I concur.
Like I haven't watched any of the because like think about it because like a lot of the streaming like service stuff was a lot darker than your average like Marvel film. Like have you seen Daredevil and like Luke Cage and stuff like that?
I've
Iron
seen some of
Fist.
them. Yeah, I've seen some of their standalones here. I particularly like Luke Cage, but yeah, I've seen some of them.
Like have you seen that like remember that scene from Netflix Daredevil where like Kingpin like goes like ape shit and like just completely like destroys that guy's like head on a door?
Yeah. Well,
Like that
That's
Like,
interesting. But the thing is, with the Disney acquisition of Marvel, Disney ended up canceling all of those series because they're going in another direction. Because what Disney decided was any Marvel produced content is all going to tie into their mainstream Marvel film universe.
yeah, I know. So I guess you're just gonna have to abandon that dark
Yeah.
aspect, right?
Yeah, so let me ask you guys, Kay and Star, did you guys ever see the Spider-Man series, Spectacular Spider-Man?
I have not.
Uh, God, there's a lot of Spider-Man like series is that like that. There's an Amazing Spider-Man. Which one is the Spectacular Spider-Man again?
It was cell shaded. Roughly came out. I want to say maybe around 2010 or so. I can't remember the exact year.
All right, that's a no from me, Chief.
Okay, 'cause I was going to say, even though it was thoroughly enjoyed by numerous people, that along with one of my favorite Marvel cartoons. I know you guys have heard of Avengers. Earth's Mightiest Hero. I'm guessing. Have you?
Earth's
More or less.
yeah, I think so.
But they got canceled because Marvel, like I said, with more, excuse me, Disney, because Disney owns Marvel now. Disney said that we're canceling these shows that do not fit the direction of the mainstream film. So they want everything correlated.
It's it's a bold move. They pulled it off with like what's essentially a 13 movie series.
But the thing is, they abandoned some really good content that could have been fine standalone because of that, though. So eventually, you're going to may rub some fans the wrong way because you count me as one of them. At least that's just the way I see it. So that's why I feel like DC is taking the right approach in terms of they have a collective universe, but they still have standalone content too that we can enjoy.
Yeah, like I really enjoyed DC's like method of doing things. So like, well, yeah, first you have the comic books, obviously, and then you have the movies, and then you have the animated movies, which are so good, and then
And don't forget,
finally,
we all can agree the classic that was Teen Titans. Teen Titan Go will not get referenced on this podcast. Nothing personal, Teen Titan Go fans.
well, hold on now, Teen Titans Go wasn't bad for what
It was fine.
it's
See,
just it was pretty. I enjoyed it, but like obviously it was kind of a bold move to have to expect people to say, "Oh, this is the new Teen Titans." Especially, oh, speaking of which, didn't you hear they're bringing back the old Teen Titan style?
well, that was the promise. They said if the Teen Titan Go movie did well, it would come back. So I'm all for that. Personally,
And
that's my
I
preference.
think it did do well. Anyways, let's move on to the actual. Final thoughts on this, Kay?
I think we've pretty much covered the topic overall.
All right, that sounds pretty good. So let's first talk about the first one on the list, Wonder Woman 1984. So, what are your thoughts on this?
There's high expectation with this sequel. I mean, the first one is a classic. We'll all agree on it. Very well done. It's just a good overall movie, not just a good superhero movie. So they have very high expectations, and let's hope that they fulfill them.
Thoughts, Kay?
I think it's interesting they're kind of reaching out to having Cheetah as a villain, and I'm somewhat optimistic about the route they're taking with this.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good choice. It's a good safe choice too because I think Wonder Woman is probably the best movie DC has right now, straight up. Like Man of Steel and all that stuff was pretty good. BVS and Justice League were debatable. Suicide Squad, I would argue, is the only really bad movie that they had. Not through the fault of their own, through like executive meddling and stuff. But Wonder Woman's the best one they have. I think it's a safe bet for it. And yes, Cheetah is probably. I mean, are there many Wonder Woman exclusive villains really besides Ares?
Well, I don't know if I say Ares was a Wonder Woman exclusive villain because of you look at what his background is, but Cheetah is the quintessential Wonder Woman villain, or one of them. But I
Like, are
think
there?
it's a matter of just like other comic series. she may have a main villain, but I think these villains still will appear, in other story arcs for other characters as well.
Well, I mean, of course they do, but like villains that are primary, like closely associated.
Yeah, I got you, but like I said, she's the one that stands out right now. Like I said, Ares, Cheetah. I can't think of too many others.
All right. So the next announcement they had was Gotham Knights, which is a video game, and it's developed by WB Montreal, the new like safe place to make video games, Montreal. So you'll be taking control of not Batman, but all of the Bat like family. You got Robin, I'm assuming Damian Wayne, Batgirl, Nightwing, and Red Hood. No Tim Drake though, it seems.
Okay, I know people want to show love to the Dark Knight and all, but why do people act like Batman Beyond does not exist? That was a great entry into the Batman universe. It would have been nice if they went another direction. Because I mean, I know the Gotham series have been very profitable, but I just would love for them to tap into that whole Batman Beyond universe that some people might not even be as familiar with. So this would be I think this would have been a good time to start a new beginning. Not saying the game won't be pretty good. I'm quite certain it will be, but that's just my take. It's time to show Batman Beyond some love. Not just gloss over him.
I feel, as a huge Batman Beyond fan, I feel like it is somewhat niche, at least to people who've never heard of it before. And as much as I'd like to see more material referencing Batman Beyond, I feel like it could be off-putting to someone who's never heard of it before.
Like, what do you mean? I don't quite follow.
Batman Beyond is about the only major version of Batman that has a major setting change, whereas every other version of Batman is mostly modern or near modern. Batman Beyond is very much sci-fi.
Definitely.
Essentially, that's as close as you would get to a cyberpunk Batman animated series because it did have, matter of fact, some episodes did have like a cyberpunk feel to it, but that's how modernized we're talking because this is like 2050 or something like that when this is taking place.
Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, I mean, I've watched it as a kid. I've watched it as a kid. It was on TV. I think I think a lot of the stuff from the comics. I mean, a lot of the stuff from like the TV shows don't really carry over. I think the only major thing that really carried over from any of the like DC animated TV shows was Harley Quinn. Because she appeared in the Batman animated series first, and then they made her give her a comic, and now she's like one of DC's most recognizable characters.
Yes. And let's give a shout out to the multi-talented Tara Strong that does. I mean, she just does a wonderful job voicing Harley Quinn. I just gotta get that plug in.
Yeah, is she the main voice anymore though of Harley Quinn?
The way we associate Mark Hamill with the Joker, we're always gonna associate Tara Strong with Harley Quinn.
Yeah, and Kevin Conroy with the Batman, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the game itself, though. The game itself is supposed to feature Mr. Freeze as the main villain so far, and they even teased involvement from the Court of Owls. Have you heard of the Court of Owls?
Vaguely.
They're mostly
Yes.
They're mostly a comic thing right now. I think they're gonna show up soon though. People really like them too. They're like a secret society of like they're like the League of Assassins, but like different.
Ra's al Ghul and Talia Ghul. I'm sorry. Ignore my nerdum.
Yeah, they're not associated with the Al Ghouls, obviously, but
I know. But when you reference that, I just went sorry. Moving on.
So it's an RPG like game. I saw it, and there's levels above the enemies' heads with a health bar, and you gain levels too. Thoughts? It's an RPG.
That's a welcome dynamic to do. Switch it up, so that'll be interesting. I'll hold off further thought until I play it, but that's definitely a welcome addition to it.
Yeah, I don't really like. This is gonna be a super hot take from me, but I don't really like Arkham combat.
In what regard?
Well, I have a I have a history of playing like a lot of more difficult action games, like Devil May Cry, Ninja Gaiden, stuff like that. And so, like the Arkham system, just keep mashing X, and then I guess use your gadgets occasionally in case you come to me that's weak to certain gadgets, and then occasionally press Y in case an indicator comes above your head or their head, I believe, to counterattack so that you don't get hit. And you're just racking up all these
Yeah.
multipliers.
And then in extreme situations, I forgot the button you use the smoke grenade to, hide.
I mean, it's a well made game. Don't get me wrong. Just didn't really enjoy it. I like my combat with a bit of difficulty,
Understood.
like, and a little bit of more style and more like free flowing, more
Okay,
free
I see
combat.
where you're going with this.
Anyways, but this looks to be a totally different style of game from the Arkham games. Obviously, it's still an action game. It's not that.
Yeah.
Anyways, any closing thoughts?
I think you summed that up better than I could have.
All right.
That's something we'll talk about. Like I said, once we have a chance to play it, we can discuss, do a review of it on another episode.
All right. So next up is The Suicide Squad. That's the name of the movie. It went from Suicide Squad to The Suicide. That's atrocious naming. Let's get that out of the personal opinion.
Well, personally, I don't know why they couldn't just call them Task Force X, because I mean that was the actual proper name in the comics of this group of supervillains.
Thoughts, Kay?
I feel like they're trying to rebrand, and I don't think it's going to succeed.
Like Suicide Squad. Well, the reason why they don't call it Task Force X is that Task Force X, off like at a glance, just sounds like this military-esque like sort of deal, and that's not what they want.
Well, technically, that was kind of the deal because remember Rick Flag. I mean, well, I can't remember his first name, but Flag was the person that kept him in line, and he was. So
I mean, yeah, I understand that it is. This is a super villain flick, though. This isn't like a James Bond Mission Possible.
Yeah.
Like,
you're right.
Yeah, like it's not Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Anyways, so here's a list of cast, and this movie so far is loaded with actors that, like, a lot of them you'll probably recognize too. You got Idris Elba as Bloodsport, Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, John Cena as Peacemaker, Viola Davis as Amanda Waller, Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang, Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag, David Dastmalchian as Polka Dot Man, Daniela Melchior as Ratcatcher 2, Steve Agee as King Shark, motion captured, Sean Gunn as Weasel, motion captured, Flula Borg as Javelin, Nathan Fillion as TDK, Peter Capaldi as The Thinker, Pete Davidson as Blackguard, Alice Braga as Solsoria, Mei Ling as Mongol, Michael Rooker as Savant, Storm Raid, or is it Reed, as Tyla, Bloodsport's daughter, Jennifer Holland as Amelia Harcourt, and Juan Diego Boto as Luna. Well, that's a lot of actors that they listed, a lot of characters. At least probably like double the size of Suicide Squad 1 cast.
It's clearly an ambitious project.
Is it the most ambitious crossover ever?
No, we all know what that is. Clearly,
That's a hot take there.
Clearly, that was sarcasm.
I know. They got some big ones. They got Idris Elba, obviously. John Cena. Everyone knows Margot Robbie. They got Nathan Fillion too.
Don't forget Pete Davidson's on Saturday Night Live, so that's still going for that whole idea of star power.
Yeah, not to mention they have the director of the first Suicide Squad, James Gunn.
Who will forever be attached to Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's another discussion another time.
Well, he says this is the biggest movie he's ever made, so if he can pull it off, the association might just switch over for a decade.
Let's hope
he'll go from the Guardians of the Galaxy director to the Suicide Squad. Wow. Oh, good news. And let's see what else they announced. They announced a Static Shock comic.
That's welcome. Cool.
Yeah, so Static Shock is returning in 2021. Let's see what else. The Snyder Cut will be released in 4-hour-long chunks. Wait, what? Oh, wait, 4-hour-long chunks, not 4-hour-long chunks.
I think that can be an episode to itself because that's a lot to digest. So I think we should save that for another time because who knows?
Yes. Beyond that, let's talk about Black Adam.
If ever they were going for the star power, because they have the one and only Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Can you smell what The Rock is cooking? Can you smell what The Rock's cooking?
I feel like he's cooking, monetizing his actor roles in any way, shape, or form possible.
I think it's working.
He is the most marketable man in Hollywood. Let the record show. That has been already shown. If you're going for the money, who else would you choose?
So this will be the first super villain focused movie. He'll be facing off against the Justice Society of America.
But are they going to make him a villain, or they going to go with the anti-hero route?
The synopsis says he's facing the Justice Society of America, which includes Atom Smasher, Hawkman, Dr. Fate, and Cyclone.
It's going to be interesting because minus Hawkman, some of them are not necessarily characters that are well known outside those well versed in the DC universe.
I think Dr. Fate is pretty well versed.
Yeah,
he's in Smallville.
He's in Injustice.
Yeah, man. Have you seen that? Have you seen that GIF? Have you seen that GIF of Dr. Fate?
Which one?
The one with him from Injustice, where people are saying he's doing all these gang signs.
I may have come across it.
Hold on, let me find a good one. It's actually kind of, man. Oh man. Here's a good one. Here's a good one. I'm gonna post it right now in the Discord for you hosts.
Oh, good grief. What the heck? Goodness, that's ridiculous. Okay. All right.
I think that's what people know him because it was a whole meme. It started a whole meme.
Oh, that, yes.
Yeah, let's see what else is. I think the Black Adam movie could be interesting if they did it. Marvel doesn't have a very villain based movie, do they?
Venom.
Not at all.
Well, Venom, they made an anti-hero, so never mind.
That's not a Disney movie necessarily. I thought Sony made that.
Yeah, Sony did do the Venom movie, but if they do the Carnage movie, that might be it.
Remember when Sony basically spoiled the end of Endgame when they released the Spider-Man trailer. Man,
Yeah.
that
Oh, that was good.
Was interesting.
man, that's like Snape kills Dumbledore levels of spoiler action going on.
But the good thing is, I did create another enjoyable Spider-Man movie. But anyhow,
So here's another DC announcement.
so
So do you know of Rocksteady Studios? They made the Arkham games.
yeah,
I've played Arkham City.
I played
Yeah.
City and Asylum.
Yeah. So they just announced their new game. It's called Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League, and you take control of the Suicide Squad, beating down members of the Mind Control Justice League.
Okay.
You can play as Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, Deadshot, and King Shark.
You seem very enthused by this concept.
I don't know. Maybe.
Almost as enthused as I am.
Yeah. Maybe. We'll have to see more about it later. We'll have to see more. Though King Shark, they haven't really showed him out anywhere besides the movies, have they?
Okay.
It looks at
King Shark wasn't even referenced in the movie. They had the other character, the crocodile. I can't think of his name right now in the first movie.
oh yeah,
Killer Croc.
that was Killer Croc actually. Yeah, you're right.
But Star, I hope you're taking notes because some of these video game things that we want to discuss later, I hope you're making sure because we have more than enough material for a future show. Hope you're taking notes on these.
Oh, definitely. You'll have to remind me what these the topics are so we can talk about DC video games for certain is one. Anyways, the next one, and I think the final major one on this list is the Batman movie, starring Robert Pattinson as the Batman.
My question is, Keira Knightley gonna be cast in it? That's sarcasm.
You mean Kristen Stewart?
You know what I meant. Thank you. I don't know why I said Keira Knightley. Kristen Stewart. Thank you.
Well, let's see who else is in this movie. Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, Colin Farrell as the Penguin, and Jeffrey Wright as Detective Gordon. Well, I haven't seen the trailer yet, so it's too late to judge. I don't know how I feel about Robert Pattinson. I don't know how I feel about Edward as the newest Batman.
Well, unfortunately, there's no werewolves for him to fight.
You know, speaking of Batman, you know Ben Affleck's returning as the Batman in the standalone Flash movie, right?
Yeah,
They
that makes sense.
They did announce that. So where does this movie fit in? Is this going to be like a young Batman?
I'm not sure how that will work. But Ezra Miller,
I'm gonna reserve judgment on this until it comes out.
Ezra Miller is a good Flash. We can all agree on that, though.
I wish it was a little less goofy, but I think that's what the Snyder Cut's for.
But I think for what he does it well, though. He makes it work.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, who do you think was the best and worst Batmans in all the movies, even the really old ones?
Oh gosh. Well, we're not gonna count the Adam West series because that was just its own thing.
Adam West, without a question.
The best or worst?
Best.
Pow, boom, zing.
I think if I had to pick the worst one, it'd probably be George Clooney.
Oof.
He was in the worst Batman movie ever made. Batman and Robin.
Jim Carrey. Yeah, Jim. That's not on Jim Carrey's highlight reel.
I'm tempted to say Val Kilmer's also. He was in Batman Forever. I remember.
Jim Carrey. Sorry.
Batman and Robin had Poison Ivy and also Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Ice to see you. Man, like, oh my god! I remember watching Batman Forever, and I remember there was a scene where Bruce Wayne was at a carnival, and this is where you're supposed to meet Dick Grayson as like a young adult, not a young adult, young adult, and then like Two-Face is there threatening them, and then Bruce Wayne stands up, and then he immediately goes, "Harvey, I'm Batman," or something like that. And no one can hear him because everybody's yelling. But he literally outs himself as the Batman. What?
Man, I haven't seen that movie in so long, but I don't necessarily want to revisit it.
You might have to, man. It's pretty bad. It's aggressively bad.
But back to the question at hand, I would say the best Batman to me would be Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton?
Yes, from the 80s movies. Batman.
Yeah.
Batman Returns.
I like Michael Keaton. I think Batfleck might be one of the top ones for me, actually. Controversial opinion.
Hot take.
Batfleck.
Hot take.
It's a real hot take. He's not the top one, I don't think. I think that one might be Christian Bale. No, actually, Christian Bale's probably the best Bruce Wayne, but man, Ben Affleck looks so much like a perfect Bruce Wayne. And then when you see him working out, God, he looks like bigger than any other Batman, in terms of his physique, even though allegedly Ben Affleck hates exercising.
Now, this is meme worthy, but it's a shame we never got him and Matt Damon in a face-off with Matt Damon as Riddler.
Matt Damon. That is true, but we did get Matt Damon in a Christian Bale movie. Well, no, it wasn't even a Christian Bale movie. Shit. No, that was just a Christopher Nolan movie. Interstellar. I was talking about Interstellar.
Yeah, but okay, yeah.
It might happen. They don't. There's no Red Hood yet. And I mean, I think DC is making the right moves and preserve in terms of their movies, because DC, I think, has been doing better in almost every front except for the animated stuff is a lot better than Marvel, I think.
Agreed.
And the comic book events have just been going off the walls. It's actually insane. I don't read the comics, but I have people who read the comics and tell me what they're all about. I get digested versions of the with the Dark Knight's Metal event, but that's just insanity. As well as when they basically introduced the Watchmen into the official DC universe. Man, I think Alan Moore is just rolling in his bed right now talking about this, but yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. Any thoughts?
That was a good TV series, even though it was intended to be short the way it was, but it was good. I liked it much better than the movie.
Really? Also, I do want to talk about the Snyder Cut a little bit, though, because my big question is, are people really that excited for the Snyder Cut? I thought people hated Zack Snyder because he directed BVS. That's the whole reason why they swapped him out for Joss Whedon, was it not?
Yes, but I feel like a lot of people felt that was a very jarring change.
Oh, yeah?
Joss Whedon's humor and Zack Snyder's tones in his movies are radically different.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Man, yeah, I think Zack Snyder would have been making a solo Batman movie than Batman versus Superman. Off the bat.
I felt that DC rushed their films with more than one hero, whereas Marvel kind of had one film at least dedicated to the individual hero. DC went Superman and then a combo film immediately off the bat.
That is true. That is true. Though, you know, it's funny you say that because like Black Widow didn't get a movie until long after she died.
No.
And I don't think Hawkeye even has his own movie still.
And he probably never will.
He might be getting I think he's getting a series on Disney Plus.
Disney Plus.
Oh, Disney Plus. That's go ask who's the actor for Star Wars? What's his name?
Which actor for what?
You know what I'm talking about. Finn. The actor for Finn.
That guy.
Yeah.
He hates Star Wars, I think, right?
Yeah, ask him about Disney Plus.
Man. Oh my god. Man, Disney. They're extremely polarized too. Let's get that out of the way first. I do want to talk about Disney because I don't like what they're doing. I don't like what Disney's doing. I don't think I ever did, aside from their movies. Some of their movies. But like, you know, Disney basically owns probably more than half of the media we consume. Do they not?
That's a fair statement.
I mean, let's list all the things they own. They own
Marvel.
They own
Disclaimer about Fox. Disney only owned Fox up to they could not acquire Fox News and Fox Sports Station because they will have too much control because they already own ESPN and ABC News.
Yeah, besides, they don't. I mean, what are they going to do with Fox and News and Sports? Just integrate them into. Plus, Fox News is really controversial too, is it not? Mostly because they're extremely like right wing.
Generally speaking, I suppose they lean that way. Yeah.
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah. Well, I think it's about time to wrap it up. Anything you want to say before you guys just conclude the show?
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to kind of seeing the results of a lot of the topics we've discussed. There's a lot of these that we're kind of guessing based on conjecture, and I look forward to what we're going to be wrong on.
As do I, and I hope that you guys will return for. I don't know about the next podcast, but maybe the next podcast. I don't know. I'll arrange something with you guys.
Yeah, thanks for allowing me to take part, and it'll be interesting to see where we go from here.
And please do spread the word about the channel. I think the channel can really use it. I've done it in a lot of places that I'm allowed to as a self promoter. But you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I absolutely understand.
Yeah, if you could spread the channel, that'd be much appreciated. In the meantime, though, I guess I'll have to see you guys later.